We've got her! Here she is! It's her, alright? You know just what that means. It means we're looking at the poem A Stone's Throw by Elma Mitchell today. You're with me, Jamain Hatton, and today is the 5th day of June 2017. As you may know, Elma Mitchell is a British poet that did much of her work in the late 1960s, and she was very passionate about gender based biases as well as gender inequality, etc. Now, personally, it's my favorite poem in the syllabus 2018 to 2023, and I like it particularly because it shows how hypocritical people can be in their quest for judgment and so on. So let's go straight into the poem A Stone's Throw by Elma Mitchell. A Stone's Throw by Elma Mitchell. We shouted out, "We've got her! Here she is! It's her, all right!" We caught her. There she was. A decent looking woman, you would have said. They often are. Beautiful, but dead scared. Tousled, we roughed her up a little. Nothing much, and not the first time by any means she'd felt men's hands greedy over her body. But ours were virtuous, of course. And if our fingers bruised her shuddering skin, these were love bites compared to the hail of kisses of stone, the last assault and battery, frigid rape to come off right. For justice must be done, especially when it tastes so good. And then this guru, preacher, God merchant, God knows what, spoiled the whole thing. Speaking to her, should never speak to them. Squatting on the ground, her level, writing in the dust something we couldn't read, and saw in her something we couldn't see, at least until he turned his eyes on us, her eyes on us, our eyes on ourselves. We walked away, still holding stones that we may throw another day given the urge. So the title of this poem, A Stone's Throw, is an example of a figurative device. It's a pun, more or less. We know a pun is a play on words. And we can look at this on two levels. And the first of it is, in the Caribbean, we are accustomed to say, "Man, he live a stone throw away, man," to show that he's living right there or a short distance. And in the second sense, it's telling us that they're literally stoning a woman to death as a punishment. So that's an example of pun. We can start off with that there, and it goes on to give us the idea that they're excited. We've got her, they're shouting here now. You know, apparently they have just discovered this woman being an adulteress. It's interesting, to say the least, that they're saying, "Here she is." They have found her. It's interesting because there's no man. They didn't find any man, or they didn't look for the man. So it tells us right there that the start of it is a bit unfair because they're punishing the woman for this sin that they might have realized, but there's no man. Now, if she was an adulteress, it means that she must have committed a sin with someone else, which is obviously going to be a man. So, why is she the only one being punished? Interesting, huh? Yeah. So, the poem talks about women being stoned in times of Sharia's law. We know that there were punishment for certain sin, fornication, adultery, and so on. And the punishment basically was stoning them to death. And this poem here is talking about a bit about what happened back then. It goes on to say, "Decent looking woman," you would have said. So it tells us that people who commit this sin, or who people who commit adultery, are often good looking, beautiful, but they said she was scared. Imagine that. Imagine if your entire life is about to be snuffled out of you by some people who appear to be doing God's work, or so they think they're doing God's work. The poet goes on to talk about we roughed her up a bit. That tells us that the poet is allowing the Pharisee, one of the persons who are doing the stoning, to be the speaker here. So it gives us the idea that they're talking about what they're doing for a justification of themselves. So a little tells us that they don't think what they're doing currently is such a big deal. So the entire content of this poem alludes to the story of Mary Magdalene in the Christian Bible. There we saw that the Pharisees were taking to Jesus a woman who they thought should be punished for committing the sin of adultery. They're asking Jesus whether or not he agrees that the woman should be stoned to death. And they're starting there by comparing their hands touching this woman to the hands touching her in pleasure. And they're saying that when they touch her, it's virtuous, means it's right or it is justified. And they're putting the word there, of course. But I often tell my students that, that of course telling us that somebody might have been touching her because of pleasure they wanted, or might have been jealous that they weren't getting a piece of it. Don't quote me on that, but it's giving us the idea that what they were doing, they felt as though it was justified. They felt as though somebody must punish this woman. But it's interesting because we are not seeing any man being punished. We are seeing men doing the punishment, but we are not seeing any man being punished. No man was ever stoned to death. Well, don't quote me on that. I don't mean that in generally the entire history, but I'm saying that in this poem here, they're not talking about any man being stoned. So it's telling us that the kind of judgment is a one-sided judgment. We can take that there. And it's going on to say that our fingers bruise her shuddering skin. It's telling us that when they were touching her, probably there might have been some bruises, but it's not anything to talk about when compared to what is about to come. And they're comparing it to love bites. So they're saying that if they were bruises on her skin, these were love bites, less effective or nothing to talk about significantly compared to what is about to come, for she's about to be killed with stones, hails of stones. So the parallel says to the hail of kisses of stone can be taken to mean two things. One, personification, and two, metaphor. Personification in the sense that they're giving the quality of a human kisses to non-human stone. The word kisses imply that something is pleasant or something is loving or something is caring. But in actuality, the use of the word kisses to compare it to something like, or to give the, I don't know why I like to say comparing. Anyway, the use of the word kisses to give a quality to something like stone is something that's very painful. In actuality, it's painful or considered harsh, and something that can lead to the death of an individual. The word metaphor, in the sense of they're comparing the stoning of the woman to hail of kisses, or to hail in the sense of it being a season, hail of it being winter. So they're comparing the stoning of the woman to things falling from the sky, to probably show the intensity of the stoning, to the intensity of the wrath of these people when it comes to punish sin or what they perceive as sins. Says and battery frigid rape to come of right. That of right tells us that what they're doing or what she's about to be dealt is really timing, or is really fair. Fair because they think that it's a good justification or it's a good punishment for the sin she has committed, but they fail to realize that she is probably not the only one who would have committed the sin. And one sided judgment because they're not punishing the man. So it says, for justice must be done. Justice of the woman committing the sin must be meted out to her. And it's saying, especially when it tastes so good. But I would ask the question, tastes good to who? Who exactly is being the person who's receiving this judgment? Who's being gratified of this kind of treatment? So here we see Jesus is actually brought into the picture. This guru means expert, preacher, God, merchant, God knows what. That God knows what part tells me that they were probably angry at him for what he would have done, stopping the punishment that he wanted so badly to take place. And it says, spoil the whole thing, speaking to her, should never speak to them. So they're saying that people who are doing this kind of sin or committing this kind of sin is not to be talked to, or is not to be treated like a normal person. And that is weird because these people are ignorant of the fact that they too might be sinning. They too might have been committing an awful sin of their own. But here they are hypocritical in the sense that, you know what? We're going to punish you because you're sinning differently to what we are accustomed to. And that is just hypocritical. And that's the world. People often chastise people for sinning differently to them. Uh, I would ask the question to my classes generally, are there differences in sins? I don't know if the Christians, and if anybody as a pious Christian will be listening to this. Are there different sins? Are there big sins and small sins? Or is it just generally sin? So here they are killing, they're chastising this woman. They want to stone her to death for sinning in the sense of committing adultery that they consider a very big thing. But punishing this woman might have been a sin of its own by itself, but they are totally oblivious to that. And that there is really interesting. It tells us how the world works. It tells us how people of the world operate. It says something we couldn't see, something we couldn't read. So it's telling us that while Jesus was sitting there, and imagine that this person, they're stoning her, and I had a picture earlier. This person was being stoned to death, and Jesus is there with her, sitting with her, showing how humble he is, how normal the woman is as well. And he's trying to show the woman that, you know what, they're punishing you, but really, they're no different. They're no different compared to you because, yes, you might have sinned and Jesus forgives you, but these hypocrites don't realize that they are sinning as well. Right? So he's saying, and we have a repetition being brought here. He turned his eyes on us, her eyes on us, our eyes on ourselves. That there is telling us that he made it known to them that they were sinners. he made it known to her that they were sinners. And then he made them realize that what they're doing is wrong. And they felt bad at that point and they walked away. And it says, still holding stones. These stones means punishment, right? And they're holding, or judgment, they're holding these stones that they may throw another day. So they may throw the stones, they may punish people for sinning another day. It's telling us that they really did not learn the lesson. The hypocrites are still hypocrites. They might have spared the woman there, but they're holding stones that they will throw to someone else another day. And that there is just very, very sad. So we can compare this poem under the theme discrimination, religion, survival, hypocrisy, of course, oppression, alienation, and anything else your teacher might have taught you. This poem is a great comparison with Once Upon a Time, because Once Upon a Time, and if you haven't listened to that yet, a link will be in the description to that. Listen to that and see the comparison. Go ahead and write the comparison down in your nice essay format. But in the poem Once Upon a Time, we see that the man recognized the fact that he was a hypocrite and he wanted to unlearn that hypocrisy. In this poem, though, we see that the Pharisees walked away with stones, and they're saying that there were stones that they will throw another day. So even though they recognized that what they might have done at that single point was wrong, they still did not change their view of what their hypocrisy was, or didn't change their view of what the bad thing that they were doing was. So they will still do it another day. Well, in Once Upon a Time, the guy wants to be innocent again. The guy wants to be pure again. He wants to know when he laughs, his laugh is a genuine laugh and not one that is brought out or brings out snake fangs, which is just fake. All right, so that's this poem here, A Stone's Throw by Elma Mitchell. Go ahead and listen to Once Upon a Time. It's a good comparison. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I hope you have enjoyed this and I hope you have learned from this. Be sure to hit me up, like this, comment, suggest future poems that you wish for me to review, subscribe so you can get that update on those future poems, share this, ensure you help your colleagues also to pass the exams. Good luck and best wishes in your exams.